Hello everyone and welcome to SplitSecond. This week we happily receive Alex and Martin from Affinity for Commander. If you don't know them yet, you should check their channel. It's full of EDH related content, gameplay videos, deck techs, podcasts, you name it. They will have the second match of this recording session in his channel in the near future. Alex brought his own Muldrotha, Bal picked up his Kemba equipments deck, Martin is on cyclist Gavi, and David is piloting his Alesha who smiles at death. Alex won the die roll and kept his first 7 with a forest and a polluted delta for lands, Llanowar elves for ramp, as well as a Song of Freyalise, paired up with his other creatures. Manglehorn and Reclamation Sage will be great in this match, and Flashback Marauder can be detrimental if he gets to abuse it with Muldrotha. Bal also kept his first 7 with an Emyria Sky Ruin, Homeward Path and Emyria Skull as lands. Sword of the Animist can get him some more planes, Relic Seeker can tutor for a specific equipment according to the board state, Arden is great at bypassing the equipment costs and possible null rod effects, while Silverblade Paladin is great if soul bonded with a creature with a sword equipped to. Martin is on trend with first 7s, Glacial Fortress and Exotic Orchard as lands with an Arcane Signet for ramp. Ominous Seeds is great in his deck full of draw potential. Radiant's Judgment can deal with Muldrotha or be cycled as well, Nadir Kraken can become a huge threat and also creates plenty of jump blockers, and Glint-horn Buccaneer can become one of many finishers. Finally, David didn't mulligan as well. Luxury Suite and Verdant Catacombs will be enough to get access to all 3 colors. Talisman of Indulgence for ramp and Lion's Eye Diamond can help to put some desired cards in the graveyard as well as pay for Alesha's trigger. Dranith Magistrate can be a key card in this match versus Muldrotha, and Phyrexian Revoken is a pithing needle on a stick. Swords to Plowshares is great removal. Ready for this match? Alex starts with a forest, casts a Llanowar Elves and passes. Bal plays a tapped Emyria the Sky Ruin and ships it to Martin. He plays a tapped Glacial Fortress and we're on David's turn. A simple Verdant Catacombs and passes as well. Alex starts his turn with a Polluted Delta and casts a Emyria Signet before passing. Bal plays a Plains and casts a Sword of the Enemies before passing as well. Martin plays his Exotic Orchard and follows it with an Ominous Sea, giving some shields to the table with the idea of incoming 8/8s. On his end step, David cracks the fetch for a tapped Godless Shrine. He gets to his turn, plays a Luxury Suite and casts Dranith Magistrate, which doesn't bode well with Alex's plans. On his end step, Alex cracks his Delta and fetches for a Zaggoth Triome. He gets to his turn and plays an Island. He follows that with a Manglehorn. When it enters, it destroys Bal's Sword of the Animist, and then sends Llanowar Elves at Martin before passing. Bal draws, plays a Plains and casts a Relic Seeker. He then lets Martin get to it. He draws and gets a counter on Ominous Seas. He plays a Prairie Stream and casts an Arcane Signet, which enters tap due to Manglehorn. He passes, and on David's turn he plays a Command Tower and follows it with a Mox Opal, which also enters tapped. He then casts a Talisman of Indulgence, also enters tapped, and finishes with a Lion's Eye Diamond that, despite entering tapped, he can actually activate it. However, he appreciates the cards in his hand, so he simply passes. Alex starts his turn with a Song of Freyalise, enabling his creatures to tap for mana. He then casts a Flashback Marauder, single-handedly dealing with Relic Seeker and Dranith Magistrate that was stopping him. He sacrifices itself and then sends Manglehorn at David's way before passing the turn. Bal plays a Buried Ruin and casts his commander, Kemba Car Regent. He then passes, and on Martin's draw step he gets another counter on his enchantment. He plays a Desert of the Mindful and then casts Nadir Kraken before passing. David doesn't draw much fuel, so he plays his Alesha who smiles at death, and passes as well. Alex draws and his Saga triggers, allowing for his creatures to add mana again. He plays a Woodland Cemetery and probes the table on removal for Alesha, and since no one else has, he casts Journey to Eternity, enchanting Manglehorn. He then taps it for mana and casts a Merciless Executioner. He triggers and he sacrifices his Manglehorn, while his opponents sacrifice their lonely creatures. Journey to Eternity triggers, returning Manglehorn to the battlefield, and itself transformed into Atzal Cave of Eternity. Manglehorn triggers and he targets David's Talisman, so he shuts down Opal's Metalcraft as well. He then sends his Elf at Martin and passes. Bal plays a Homeward Path and then casts Sram, Senior Edificer. He follows it with a Silverblade Paladin, that he soulbonds onto Sram, so he can have a double strike blockade. He passes, and as Martin draws, he gets closer to the Big Kraken. He plays a Temple of the False God and casts his commander, Gavi Nest Warden. He then cycles Clear for free due to Gavi, drawing another card, getting another counter on Ominous Seas, and spawning a cute little dinosaur cat. He ships it to David, who is feeling a bit in a tight corner. He plays a Mana Confluence and simply passes. We're back to Alex's awesome deep voice. He Saga triggers, putting a +1/+1 counter on each of his creatures and giving them vigilance and indestructible until the end of turn. He goes to combat, dealing 5 at David and 4 at Baal. On his second main phase, he casts his commander, Muldrotha, the cute slime. He plays a polluted altar from his graveyard and cracks it to get a sunken hollow. He then recasts Song of Frailties from his graveyard and passes. Baal gets to his turn and sacrifices Buried Ruin to return the Sword of the Enemies to his hand. He then casts the sword, triggering Thram, and draws a card. He plays Emiria Shattered Skyclave untapped, paying 3, and casts a Path to Exile on Alex's Muldrotha. He gets a forest and Baal passes. On his end step, however, Martin cycles an Irrigated Farmland for free, getting another counter on Ominous Seas. He then cycles Radiant's Judgment, getting another counter and another Kitty. On his turn, he casts Riel the Everwise, and follows that with a Sacred Excavation, returning to his hand Radiant's Judgment and Irrigated Farmland. He plays a farmland and cycles Radiant's Judgment for free due to Gavi. He draws 1 from Riel, getting a counter on Ominous Seas. He then draws 1 from the cycle ability itself, generating another cat dinosaur. He sends 2 cats at David and passes. On his end step, David casts his Swords to Plowshares, targeting Gavi, as he has plans for her not to return. On his turn, he casts a Reanimate, targeting Dranith Magistrate, hopefully delaying any commander casts. He then casts a Phyrexian Revoker to bypass Flashback Marauder reanimation lines. In response, Martin removes 8 counters from Ominous Seas to
release the Kraken.
As Revoker enters the battlefield, David names Sword of the Enemies out of better options. His Mox Opal is now online and he uses it to cast a Wishclaw Talisman that enters tapped before ending his turn. Alex's Saga triggers again, enabling all his creatures to tap for mana. He then casts a Dictate of Erebus, and you can almost hear the table's moans.
Really?
He then activates Atzal, Cave of Eternity, returning Flashback Marauder to the battlefield. For this, David wasn't counting. Heck, no one was counting. And just like that, Baal and David lose their creatures and Martin just loses 2 kitties. He passes, and on Baal's turn, he plays an Ancient Tomb, and feels that anything he puts on the field will not last long, so he simply passes. Martin draws a really nice card, New Perspectives. When it enters, he draws 3 cards, getting to 8 in his hand, so he can now pay 0 for all his cycle costs. He still casts a Fluctuator in case the enchantment doesn't stick around, and then sends the 8/8 at Alex's face. Looks like someone is sleeping on the couch tonight. David gets to his turn and plays a Shy Timna to jump block, and passes. On his end step, Martin cycles a Hieroglyphic Illumination, getting another Foreshadow counter. Alex seems to be the man of the sagas. He gets another +1/+1 counter on each of his creatures, and they gain Vigilance and Indestructible until end of turn. What isn't broken needs no fixing, so he uses Atzal, Cave of Eternity to bring Flashback Marauder to the battlefield once again, clearing the board of every other creature but Riel. He then sends all his creatures at Martin, who responds by cycling Rebuild, drawing 2 cards and getting 2 Foreshadow counters, and removing 8 to release another Kraken. He blocks the biggest creature and takes 7. On his second main phase, Alex casts a Reclamation Sage targeting Ominous Seas, and passes. Baal draws and plays a Plains, casts a Leonine Abunus and equips it with a sword before passing. On his end step, Martin cycles a Rogreen Crystal and gets to his turn. He plays a Mystic Gate and casts Brawling Skyshark Rider, which allows him to tutor for his partner, Shabraz the Skyshark. He then casts Crystalline Resonance and proceeds to cycle Tectonic Reformation, triggering Brawling, Crystalline Resonance and Riel. He ends up drawing 2 cards, transforming Crystalline Resonance in Atzal, Cave of Eternity, and pinging everyone for 1 with a Shark Raider. He uses Crystalline Resonance to add 1 red to help on casting Glint-horn Buccaneer. He then cycles Crab, triggering Brawling, Buccaneer and Crystalline Resonance, that he transforms into another Glint-horn Buccaneer. At this point, with 9 cards in hand, he keeps on cycling cards and pinging each opponent for 3, due to both Glint-horns and Brawling triggers on each discarded card. When he runs out of cycling cards in hand, he goes to combat. He attacks Baal for lethal and goes to his cleanup step, where he has to discard 2 more cards, dealing another 6 damage to his other opponents and winning. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. When Muldrotha seemed to have a good engine going, the cycling potential from Martin overran us completely out of nowhere. If you enjoyed this match, go check Affinity for Commanders channel, where you can find more gameplay videos, and the second match of this recording section will be available there soon. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Ajimo, Uncrustable, Drunken House Cat, V, RJ and Heated Chill, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing or by becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Join us again next week for a new set of Commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.